you knew when you sat with the guy for a few minutes, yeah, I got you. You're buying what I'm selling. You're listening to it. Now it could be dangerous. I did some cartel work, and the cartels are, just to use them as an example, of any organized crime. If I turned it up too high, I could be very offensive.
Yeah.
I'm a dude. I'm a slick back from New Jersey, New York. I'm a gangster. I'm this, I'm that.
Welcome back, viewers, watchers, listeners. I'm your host, Tyler Owen. Got a guest co-host in the house today, Mike Gomez, one of our field services supervisors. Appreciate you being on, man.
Oh, thank you.
Been busy.
A little bit burning up the road.
Yeah. San Antonio, Austin, then up to you went Houston last week.
Alpine, El Paso.
Yeah, it's been a while, which typically our field services, as you guys are well aware, we cover the entire state of Texas, which happens to be the biggest and best state across the country, and just going to support you guys.
Discount Tire really loves me.
Yeah, that and oil change places, I'm pretty sure. So
yeah,
but anyway, anything going on in your zones?
No, we've got some stuff, small things coming up that they're not technically secure yet, but I will announce the motorcycle rodeo in Round Rock.
Yeah, big time.
Tentative dates right now are March 4th through the 8th.
Yeah,
it was a great success last year.
It was
to make it even double this year.
It was, and what's cool is that the Round Rock Police Department, they're stepping to success. For those that don't know, the motorcycle rodeo benefits Tmpa charities and the Step into Success, which the officers get to go out and purchase some shoes for the needy little children there in the community, and it's a good deal, man. And I've really enjoyed going up there, and me being a prior motor cop, it's a really enjoyable event, and it's at a beautiful spot too, by the way.
Yeah. We got some really exciting vendors coming this year.
Yeah.
I'm going to save that announcement for later on, but we got some good vendors coming out. It's going to be great.
For those that have been asking about the Texas Peace Officer Memorial, again, the date is set for April 26th on a Sunday. It's a great event to show up and show your support for those who have given the ultimate sacrifice for not only their communities, but also this great state of Texas. And so I encourage you, if you've never been, go ahead and show up. We are going to be on hand along with all the concerns of police survivors. Shout out to them for putting on an amazing Peace Officer Memorial. It's right there at the Capitol grounds. Beautiful event, and it's always good to see. It kind of turns into like a family reunion, but that's going to be April 26th. And for those that have been asking, save the date. Tmpa 2026 conference is going to be July 24th through the 26th. There in Dallas, Texas, at the Hyatt Regency. And speaking of the conference, one of our special guests today, who I have grown to love and respect. I met him at the San Antonio conference a couple years ago, had a great time, and he's got a pretty mediocre story. I mean, he's kind of not really a big deal, but when you start talking to him, you kind of figure out maybe he is. So Mike wanted to get him on and dive off into his book. I heard some chitter chatter from Mike that he had a couple of questions about what's going on in the book, and so you've also got some a pretty fascinating story. So we appreciate you coming on Blue Grid, and you've also got some stuff going on here in Texas with some mental health aspect and some rehab places, so we're going to discuss those too. But Mike, intro our guest.
Giovanni.
Yes.
Welcome, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Yeah,
Thanks for
talking about it for a long time.
I think for a few years, and I've been ducking you like I owed you money.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for real.
So it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, why don't you talk about where kind of you start off your career at, and then kind of where we are today.
Yeah. So I am a 27-year law enforcement officer, third generation cop. I say cop because I was a cop. Okay?
Yeah.
I started out my career as a cop. Everybody thinks I'm a federal agent, but I was not a federal agent.
So you're a real cop.
Yeah,
a real cop.
and not to offend anybody, but it's a big difference. We'll even say that. Even my agent friends say that. So yeah, I started out in New Jersey. I was a police officer in New Jersey. I was a B cop. I got hired. I should have never been a B cop. I should have been dead or in jail by 25, I think I was told. I was a cop's kid. I was a grandkid of a cop, family, brothers, uncles, all law enforcement. But I was the black sheep of my family. I always had that flame burning to be a cop. I write about it in my book. And I had a great career. I worked patrol. I worked my way into narcotics early on. I was a great narcotics cop. Ticked my father off because he wanted to see me be a suit. We call them suits, right? In the New York, New Jersey area, when you become a detective, you're either a gold shield or you're a suit. So he convinced me to be a suit. I said, nope, I want to do narcotics. That's my thing, right? Because I came from the street.
Yeah.
So all my friends were rolling in the street, doing some really bad things when growing up. I was in trouble as a young kid. I lost a lot of my friends, some of my family to addiction. So it started hitting me early on. So that was my passion. And I understood the street. I had no official training. Early in my career, I was afforded the opportunity. You talk about motorcycles. I can't come to the rodeo because I drive rat bikes. Whatever. If anybody doesn't know, Harley Davidson, those 70 choppers. So again, I came to work one night on my chopper, and actually it was my uncle's bike, and I borrowed it. And when I came, my chief found me, and it was totally street illegal, and that just opened the door to my undercover world.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks after that, I did some low-hanging fruit, as they say, little buys, infiltrated a biker organization early on in the early 90s. And that was it. Once the DEA got a hold of me, I started working operations for the DEA.
I do think it's important to kind of hit on this and for those that grow up in challenging environments and that run with, let's just call it what is the black sheep of their community. It makes you a better cop, because if you're not friends with the enemies growing up and you understand the dynamics of what world they live in, it makes you such a better cop. Not necessarily the ones that go to narcotics that end up being successful, but even the street cops understand the complexities and challenges of kind of what they deal with on a daily basis. And I think you clearly understood that, and it made you a better police officer later on in life.
You know, it's a great point you make, Tyler, but I didn't understand it early. I understood it later in my career.
Yeah.
I just wore all of my trauma as a badge, like I was taught to do. Again, Vietnam era was my father. Korean War veteran was my grandfather. Like, I was taught, you take all your trauma, you push it down. And I was taught you use all that, and I didn't have any formal training. It wasn't until later, and even my unit that I when I retired with the FBI task force, even the FBI agent acknowledged, the FBI themselves acknowledged, some of the best working guys they have in their undercover units, guys and girls both, are the people that come from the street, are the people come from those black sheep families, or those hard knock history as a kid.
Right.
That street mentality is what you can't teach that.
You can't teach that.
It's distinct. We call it, in my world, we call it distinct. When you have distinct, when I walk in a room, I want you to either know I'm a biker, I'm a bad guy, I'm a gangster, I'm whatever, I'm a white supremacist, whatever I was infiltrating, and I've infiltrated it all. I've had a great career. You could turn it up and turn it on. Mm-hmm. But when you do harness it and you understand the powerful tool that you have, and you're given the right tool and training, man, it's a game.
And you had no jail experience, right? We talk about that a lot here on the podcast. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about like working in corrections. Here in Texas, a lot of our, I call them, the best training you can receive before you get into law enforcement is working inside the jails for those that, just don't jump off and have the success stories like you got where they just become a cop. But did you work in the jail at all?
I didn't work in the jail. Where I come from, we collars for dollars. We arrested you. We put you, we processed you. We dropped you off at the county. So, which was crazy because we had exposure to the yard because, again, I'm dating myself. It was 35 years ago that, that's my anniversary 2 days ago. It's 35 years I was sworn as a cop. So back then you used to drive your square body Chevy and you drove it into the yard at the county, like at the county jail. Yeah. And all the prisoners, they blew a whistle and they went against, well, you had your weapon on you. It was insane. Like you drove into the yard, you and your partner got out. You didn't drive it to a Sally port. You went right into the yard. They yelled at them. They all went against the wall, and all grades, all walks of life, and all kinds of criminals. And then you processed your guy. You dropped them off. So the exposure I had was great because later on, when I did murder for hires and I had to go into prison, I understood what a green room was. I understood what the holding rooms were. I understood the live. And I also had friends inside. My family and friends were inside of prisons, so I knew commissary. You have to understand that whole culture. Yep. Dude, if you're a cop and you don't understand what it's like inside a jail, so those guys that did work in corrections, man, they had a plethora of just knowledge and stuff they could bring to the street.
Yeah,
nice. And to your point, it's great because later on in my career, when I had to share with the bad guy and say, yeah, I was locked up, like I knew where I did my time. So later on in my career, in the book I write about it, but I did time in prison. I had 4 personas, 4 different identities, maybe 5 at the end of my career. Some of those guys were white-collar guys. Other identities I had done prison time. Yeah. So one guy did time in Chesterfield, Virginia. Well, you better know what Chesterfield looks like. You better know what their commissary looks like. You better know how to cool your food, how to cool your drinks in the sink, how to do this, how to wash your clothes, you have to know the whole culture.
Well, and I think it goes back to this, is that you understood that as far as the culture of where you worked at. And I think the today American police officer, whether you're working in Virginia, Texas, Louisiana, wherever it is, I think they lose sight is that you have to, in order to police that community, you have to be a part of that community and understand that culture. And I guess I'll just say this, is that later on in my career, you're wanting to make arrests young in your career, a little dime bag of marijuana, all day long. A 1 or 2 year cop's going to arrest them, put them in jail. Why don't you go ahead and flip that and then use that for later on for like investigations or whatever you want to do, homicide investigate. A little dime bag of weed can get you in so many spots that you'd be shocked, right? So it's the culture. And I think by you understanding that early on in your career is what made you successful. We're going to hear some stories about those today.
Great.
So let's get into the book.
Okay, let's do that.
I want you to go ahead and just start, just kind of walk us through the book. As far as we talked about how you kind of got started into it, but actually diving into when you knew that this was going to be a good run, when you knew you were on track to take everybody pretty much down.
Yeah, it's a good question, Mike. Like, I'm not a fisherman, right? But I have fished, right? I mean, I was born and raised in the city, but my parents got us out because I was a problem child. They didn't want us in the streets, so they would take us up to the Catskill Mountains. And I have outdoorsman in me. Compare it to fishing, right? If there's any fishermen watching or listening, when you fish and you know a fish hits your hook or hits your bait in a certain way, you know it's on, fish on.
Yep.
Dude, it's the same. It's crazy. But apply that to when we went somewhere and I walked in with the stink and I had to turn it up or down, I knew how bad you hit the hook and took my bait and how bad you were on that. And I knew.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, you were locked in.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a guy, and you apply it to anything. Anything we talk, and a little caveat, when we talk about this, any law enforcement that's watching or listening, I don't want to hear like, well, I'll never do that deep cover on the cover. The cover stuff, or I'll never work narcotics. This applies across the board with law enforcement. Anything you do in this career, or anything you do in life, dealing with other people, reading other people, it's all human life skills, right? So anytime you walk in, if you question a guy in a car stop and he has one dime bag of weed on him, right? He has a bag on him. He has a little bit of meth. Well, by asking that question, you want to get in the car, you want to get in the trunk, you need your probable cause, then you ask him.
Right.
And the minute you say, like, well, anything else in the car? And it's their body language, it's their shoulders drop, it's they start sweating, all this. That's the things you're looking for. So we knew going in, especially this case, you knew when you sat with the guy for a few minutes, I got you. Mm-hmm. You're buying what I'm selling, you're listening to it. Now, it can be dangerous. I did some cartel work, and the cartels are, just to use them as an example, or any organized crime, if I turned it up too high, I could be very offensive.
Yeah.
I'm a dude, I'm a slick back from New Jersey, New York, I'm a gangster, I'm this, I'm that. Early in my career, I was a biker, I was an outlaw biker. So I had hair down in my ass, I had the braids, I had the earrings, I had the chin, the whole thing, and everything. I had the whole persona. I looked like a hardcore outlaw biker. So you got to be careful with that because you could offend people, and that will get you hurt. They'll rob you. Gangbangers were not prevalent in New Jersey and the East Coast. They were basically West Coast,
right?
And that whole Tupac, Biggie, all that stuff was going on. But when they came over to the East Coast, I had to be real careful how I walked. No more dime dealers in the street. My guys are like, well, this is a long-haired dude. I'll just rob this dude. He's got cash on him.
Well, but I think it's important to point this out is that. And for those listening out there that's 22, 25, 26 years old, starting their career in law enforcement, I think that we oftentimes think, okay, UC work's maybe not what I want to do, but UC work really at your time frame was new in a sense of this, was that you guys kind of set the tone and quite possibly is the reason why we don't have it to this day. Y'all kind of ruined it for us, but what you got to do, the abilities that you had, not many people moving forward in law enforcement within any part of the United States is going to have that opportunity anymore. I don't think. I mean, I don't know of deep UC work. Now it's kind of have CIs report, and give your reports in. Does that make sense? Or am I wrong for thinking that?
And of course, I got this from the book. And the reason for that, Tyler, is because from what I figured out or what I could see or understand more so is someone's that deep and undercover, not only their life, but their family life changes forever.
Yep.
Forever.
Yeah.
And that is a human resource, dilemma all day long. What do we do with them now?
Right.
What do we do with them now? And Gio went through all that, and one of the things I want people to know is how you handled when you felt that somebody was on to you, how you reacted back to that person, especially when they were trying to call you out or they were fishing themselves.
Suspected I was a cop or a rat?
Yeah.
I'd rather be suspected I was a cop than be a rat because they kill a rat before they kill a cop, right? So you had to be real careful. And I did. I write about it in a book that I got called out a few times because they suspected that I was being followed and brought heat to them. Not that necessarily that I was a cop, but just that I was a rat. That's the worst thing to ever be. So it's an individual thing, right? We're trained. Much later in my career, I had training from the FBI, and then I had the human intel, right? All the human intelligence and the body language and the psychological components that were given to me. After I had those tools in my toolbox, that's a game changer, right? Early on, guys would say to me, are you a rat? Are you a cop? You know, the typical.
Right.
So if you're a cop, you got to tell me you're a cop. And then you brush it off and go, really? Really stupid? That's what you're going to say to me? And you got to be careful because, again, what I said before is if I tick this guy off or I feel like, you know, oh, so you think you're smarter than me, Giovanni?
Yeah.
You know, now I'll just shoot you, you know? So you have to be real careful. So it's the individual's, the dynamic that you're standing in. It's an individual choice how you respond to it. I would never be aggressive as an undercover, whether I was buying off a corner, like a corner boy, or if I was doing deep cover work. Deep cover work isn't really done much anymore because, like you said, social media, technology, all these things, facial recognition, bios, that's hard to do, but it can still be done. You know, old school undercover work can still be done, but how you react to it, it's all human interaction. It's the emotions, the tone of somebody's voice. I tell people all the time, you have to have not two cogs, you know, wheels going. You have to have multiple wheels spinning in your head. You're having a thought up front, or what's Tyler going to ask me next? Where is this conversation going? How do I keep this conversation moving forward? But wait a minute, if Tyler takes a turn on me or Mike asks me a question, that's the other side of your brain that's working.
Right.
It is exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. This isn't just roll up on a bicycle, put a hat on backwards, grow a goatee, and then go buy some dope. That could be sometimes the most dangerous work you do too. But you really have to be invested in it. Like anything you do related to this, anything you do in life, you want to be the best you can be, right? But law enforcement, there's so many chances of us losing our life in a split second, as we know, or as we all unfortunately see all the time nowadays. But again, it's this time of the cultural divide that we have, cultural divide I had going through, all these things I'm looking at. So when a dude comes to me, if he's got 5 guys behind him, Mike, and he goes, you're a rat? I'm not a rat, you know. And again, some of my friends have been stripped naked in a basement, you know. I recently talked to a good buddy of mine, Scotty Payne, Big Country, and he got by an outlaw motorcycle group. He got brought downstairs, you know. You know, and he was stripped down, and they searched him for wires and everything. So
and at what point does law enforcement look at that like, okay, we need to move in or pull them out?
Oh yeah, it's
you know, it's kind of a risk.
Yeah, it's a risk. You're talking. When I first started, about half the size of this book was my device. Nowadays, is you could put a microphone on an ant's ass. You know, like technology is so much different now. So you had to be careful.
Back in the day, lots of times, though, there was no one listening to what was going on.
Right.
Yeah, they were. So, no, they should have been, right? So I'll give you an instance. For instance, my early days, I wore the Kel, right? Like the recording devices. They were, not everybody knows what a VHS tape is, but, you know, half the size of this book. Now, where are you putting that? You're either going to put it in the front of your pants, the back of your pants, or you're going to put it down in one of your boots or something. You had 2 wires. One was a white. Of course, they're going to make it a white wire. Why make it like another color? White. Bright wire. So one went up, and it was a transmitter. That transmitter went to you guys, my backup team that was sitting down the street, and you had to have direct line, right, of this building in order to pick me up while I'm having this live conversation with you. The other one was a microphone coming out of this side, and the microphones are a little bit thinner than these.
Yeah.
So you had one coming up this side, and that was my microphone that was recording the conversation. And again, I'm dating myself, but you guys had a big suitcase. It was called reel-to-reel. It was either cassette tapes or the reel-to-reel recorders. And it's only held on by Scotch tape or maybe some hospital tape, right? Halfway through, one wire, I was doing a gun deal and a dope deal. The wire fell out, and I just happened to see, what is that by my leg? And it was my wire hanging out of my shirt, and it was the white wire just dangling. So, yeah, technology has changed over the years. It's amazing what they could put stuff in now. But all these things, you had direct line, but where I come from, it's the concrete jungle. So your direct line of sight, chances are, as soon as I came into this building, you lost me. And it's not like you can blow a whistle and call timeout. You can't call me on my cell phone. I had pagers back then.
Right.
You know, we had calling cards. They hit a payphone. We didn't have all this technology we had then. So you guys would sit out there and be like, oh, and I would work on some hardcore guys, cops. And they're salty old guys in Vietnam. And like, oh, well, you know, I'm going to get a coffee.
He'll be fine.
He'll be all right. If he needs something, and I used to say, Mike, all right, if I need you, just stay by the window, keep an eye on the front window. You know, I'll try to make my way and I'll pick something heavy up and throw it through the window if I can't. You know, you had to have all these backup plans, like you still do operationally, but times have changed, but they haven't, right? Technology changes. I get a lot from the young generation today, like, well, Policing is different. We now have to wear body cameras and this and that. Listen, you create the environment.
Yeah.
You paint the picture. You're the artist on a car stop. You set the tone, just like you're walking into whether it's the domestic violence, a car stop, or, an emotionally charged call that you're on. You set the tone. If you're not regulated and you're not calm, everything's being recorded. Man, don't tell me. Since the 90s, I've been recording my work,
Yeah.
Video and audio. So it's all what you bring to the table. What do you bring to the game? That's going to set the tone. So you have to have all this spinning in your mind when you go in. And I got to hope if shit hits the fan, I know you guys are going to come barging in. And it was crazy. We were old school. I used to say to my guys when we in early narcotics days, please, all I ask, please, guys, just don't let my family sit through a trial.
Yeah.
I can say that now because I'm retired, right? But
Right.
I used to say, do not, Tyler, don't let my family sit through a trial.
Yep.
And he knew what I meant. And they were like, okay, I'm not.
And those
saying.
listening understand too.
They understand.
What was the longest you were actually deep undercover where there was really no contact with family that you had to live and breathe and eat? I mean, the entire lifestyle.
I'd say the longest was the case with the Mafia. That was the longest case I had because I danced in both worlds. I came home, like Mike touched on a little bit. Again, the book is the intro of my life into law enforcement, but then later on it's the cases I worked. But the Mafia case was probably the longest and the most daunting and most tasking on my family. It ruined my career. It literally ended my career. Yeah, so the longest I went was probably a year and a half, in and out of my life and my family's life, which was crazy too.
Yeah.
Very much like law enforcement.
Yep.
When again, you listen to my story about the undercover world, don't just say, well, I'll never work deep under, and I'll never go that deep, and I'll never be a narcotics guy, I'll never be this. Apply it to your life. Like I tell first responders today, when you're afforded the ability to work an extra job, and I got to be away for doubles, that's my life. I was away for 2 nights, 3 nights, and I kind of sneak home. You're doing the same thing. You can grab an extra shift. Maybe you work in construction. Maybe you have a business on the side. Yep. You're cooking or something on the side. And, well, babe, I'm just trying to make money, Well, hon, I'm just trying to pay the bills. I'm trying to pay for our trip to Disney World coming up next summer,
Yep.
So you're leaving your family behind like I left my family behind. I did it for the good of the job. We're all doing it for the good of the job.
You were fortunate in the sense of that you had someone at home there towards, I think when you were on this last case that understood the work.
Because my wife was law enforcement?
Yes.
I get that a lot, yeah. And then people go, well, it's great that you were married to a Leo, right? Law enforcement. She was a detective. She was a detective in New Jersey. And no, she worked undercover. When we met, she worked undercover. I worked undercover. I was investigating, infiltrating a cartel when we first met. I was DEA when we met. And no, that's the worst. Because she knew the job. She knew my lies.
Yeah.
She knew what I could say. She's like, listen. And again, I write about it in a book. That's how this Charlie Horse case started when I infiltrated the Mafia. I was home on a Sunday. Perfect example and great caveat. I'm home on a Sunday working in my garage, jerking around. My buddy Nick calls me. He says, G, what are you doing? Nothing. Sunday, I got a couple of guys, low-hanging fruit coming down. I'm going to buy a half a key or a kilo of Coke. Want to come down to Atlantic City and have dinner? Now, when my Uncle Sam pays for dinner, I eat good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My Uncle Sam's
Absolutely.
the government. So I said, well, yeah, let me see what's up. I run inside. I say to my wife, hey, Nick needs me. I got to shoot down the AC. Is it okay if I go have dinner? And this is about 5, maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She goes, what do you mean he needs you? Because she knows he doesn't need me because she's a Leo, right? And she goes, he doesn't need you. So I go, well, come on, just let me go down. He needs me because he's got some guys from Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is my old neighborhood in that area. I said, so I don't want him to do it alone. Let me go. She goes, listen, I'm on call. She was working sex crimes at the time. She goes, I'm on call at midnight tonight. If you're not home, don't give me this BS that the targets ran late, this happened, that happened, because she knew. Yep. She was buying dope too.
Yeah.
So she said, if you're not home, don't come home. I'll kill you, So, of course, by 10 o'clock, the bad guys don't show up. Cops wait. Bad guys don't. I'm sitting there. I'm stressing. I'm literally stressing. That's how I infiltrated the Mafia. It was all by my wife telling me and threatening me not to be home, do not be late.
Yeah.
And by the time these bad guys walked in, I'm in there watching the Yankees, and the Yankees are losing. I'm a Yankee fan, and I go, I can't.
You're fixing to lose too.
Yeah, I'm going to lose. I ain't going to have nowhere to go home to. So by the time the bad guys walked in, I was so, but again, I played on it. I was still in role. I was still doing my job, but I used it. I used my emotions. And by the time the bad guys walked in, I was like, I was the angry elf. Like, they walked in. They're like, hey, sorry, we're late. This is Giovanni. Yeah, get out of here. I want nothing to do with you now. I wouldn't even look at them. I wouldn't even make eye contact. And by me doing that, my buddy Nick knew what I was doing. He knew I wasn't unplugged, but he knew I was playing a part. They thought I was a gangster's gangster. They went back to the mob up in North Jersey and told them, we went down to Philly last night in Atlantic City. We had dinner with the Philly Mafia guys and this and that. They painted a picture for these guys. That's how it started.
Wow.
Just on a coke deal.
Yeah.
And all because my wife told me. So when you say my wife understood, no. My wife warned me when she found out I was infiltrating the Mafia. All the stuff we did, I was DEA task force. I infiltrated a lot of things. But when I became FBI task force and we started doing that, she said, please stop doing this. She begged me. She said, please stop doing this because this is not going to end well for us. She knew.
Yeah.
She knew my drive. She knew my addiction to adrenaline, which is like any other addiction. Adrenaline and the job could be an addiction as well. So I didn't want to hear it.
Well, and I kind of want to hit on that. I was on the task force too at the Marshal Service, and it was a great time, right? Some of the best moments of my law enforcement career was on that unit because of the brotherhood and some of the cases that we worked. But back to adrenaline, I chased the adrenaline over my family and the aspect of being a part of a special unit, right? And I think I struggled with that, and people don't really realize the struggle with adrenaline and the struggle to deal with adrenaline is just as bad as anybody dealing with a narcotic problem, an alcoholism issue, mental health. And it took me a while until I got out of it. Thankfully, went to work for Tmpa full time to understand that dynamic. How long after your law enforcement career did you realize the impact that it had on you and your family? And how did you deal with that?
Yeah, great topic. So my adrenaline, I didn't know it was such a bad addiction. Just like drinking, just like using pills or over the counter or something, I didn't know it was out of control the way it was. I did not know it until I retired, until I had to unplug and I had the DTs. I had like withdrawal.
This was in control of you.
It was absolutely in control of me. When they unplugged me, in this case, the Charlie horse came to an end with the Mafia. Again, it ended horribly, much like when somebody hits their bottom.
Yeah.
When you're drinking or, your marriage is at the end of its, my marriage was at the end of its rope at the end of this case. It was I swear to God, it was like adrenaline was the substance, and it was horrible for me. I didn't realize how out of control I was. They unplugged me. Now I'm sitting home. Now I'm just, what do? I'm like a caged rat.
Yeah.
I am like a caged animal sitting there. I can't sit here all day. What am I going to do? And she's literally going, what are you doing? Like, your kids are here. Play with your kids.
Yeah.
What are you doing? It started hitting me maybe 9 months after, and a few months after. And it was so bad that things bubbled over and some events happened in my house. And I think I wrote about it in a book. She punched me. My wife couldn't take it anymore. She was a law enforcement officer. She came over to me and came across the room and punched me right in the face. And that was my eye opener, because not that second, she came over and said, what's the matter? If you miss your gangster friends, if you miss your girlfriends out in Vegas, go back to Vegas and live with them. Get out of my house. I don't want you here. And it's hard to tell the story because it's so emotional, but she came over, cracked me, but that was my awakening moment.
Yep.
And you know how I responded to it? Man, it was so good. That was my adrenaline. She hit me right here as hard as she could, almost broke her hand. And she's Sicilian and Napolitan, so she's Italian, so she hit me hard. I sat there and absorbed that. I got, that's what I wanted. I wanted somebody just to hit me. I wanted that. And that was a jolt of adrenaline for me. And then, horrifically, she laid on the floor, called her mother because her father was a law enforcement officer who perished on 9/11. And her mom had gone through a lot of emotional stuff, so she called her mom to try to talk to her about it. As she's in fetal position, crying on the floor, I stepped over my own wife, right? Went upstairs, went in my bedroom, and napped like I just ran a marathon, like I earned this nap.
Mm-hmm.
And I went upstairs, and the next morning I woke up, and it hit me like a ton of bricks and realized how bad I was.
On the next episode of Blue Grit Podcast.
And then I reached out to some friends in our program. We had what's called a safeguard program. Every 9 months I had to go for a mental health check. And they did that for us, but it was mostly because we were a tool in the toolbox for the federal government, so they did it. But it's the greatest tool we had, because when I had psychological services, I could talk to people. I realized how bad I was, and I reached out right there and said, listen, I hit my bottom. I was asked to come into this industry. I realized, wow, there's something here that's healing for me. I didn't do it selfishly, but I realized I fit into it. And there was a need for first responder programming.
Yeah.
So I had gotten in, and I got into a group of investors that asked me to do something. And that kind of was the trajectory for the last 6 years of my service in that field.